Nathan Webb was 40 years old the night his wife pointed at him across a room of 200 people and laughed. He had not been invited to the gala. That detail mattered. He had arrived in the dark suit he wore to client presentations and walked into the rooftop event space of the Marriott Marquis in downtown Atlanta with the quiet confidence of a man who understood the architecture of the room he was standing in, because he had, in fact, designed the renovation of its structural envelope 3 years prior. His wife, Daphne, was at the center of the main floor in a red dress, surrounded by her agency's senior staff and three clients Nathan recognized from the quarterly reports he still received as a matter of corporate record, because he was still legally what he had always been, the silent majority owner of Elevate Creative Group, LLC. She did not know he was there, not at first. Then she turned. He watched her expression move from surprise to something colder, more practiced, and then she said, clearly enough that the four people immediately around her could hear it, that she was sorry, that her husband had apparently misread the invitation, and that he was as usual in the wrong room. The laughter was light, social, the kind that costs nothing and lands everywhere. Nathan did not move. He did not flush. He did not look at the floor. She had called him a guest in the company he owned. She had no idea what the paperwork in Denise Okafor's office had said for the past 11 years. She had no idea that the wrong room was in every legal sense his. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The apartment on Peachtree Battle Avenue was quiet in the early mornings in the way that only large, well-built spaces could be quiet. A stillness that came from thick walls and good windows and the particular insulation of a place that had been designed rather than assembled. Nathan had chosen it for exactly those qualities. He was an architect. He noticed what held things up. He was at his drafting table by 6 most mornings, the city still gray and unhurried below the window, his coffee growing cool beside the current set of drawings, the way it always did when he was in the work. The project on the table now was a mixed-use development in Buckhead, 14 stories, residential above, commercial below, a public plaza at ground level that the client had originally said was too expensive and that Nathan had kept in because some things were worth insisting on. He had learned that from his grandmother. Eugenia Webb had built a cleaning services company in southwest Atlanta over 30 years, starting with 2 employees and a used panel van and growing it, without investors or fanfare or a single profile in a business publication, into a firm that serviced 40 commercial contracts when she finally transferred ownership to her son. She had told Nathan the summer he turned 16 and was working the weekend jobs she arranged for him, that you never built anything worth keeping by doing it loud. The doesn't care who watches, she had said, pressing one hand flat against the side of a commercial property they were cleaning that evening. It just cares if the work was done right. He had framed that sentence in the way people framed the things they intended to carry. He had met Daphne at an architecture industry mixer in 2016, the kind of event he attended twice a year as a professional obligation and left as quickly as professionally acceptable. She had been there pitching her young agency's event and branding services to firms in the industry, and she had approached him with the easy confidence of someone who was good at approaching people, and they had talked for 40 minutes about the gap between how buildings were designed and how they were marketed to the public. She was smart. She was perceptive. She asked a specific question about spatial language in commercial real estate that he had not expected from someone outside the field, and he had gone home that night still thinking about it. He had believed in that version of her, the curious, perceptive, building things version, for a long time afterward, longer than the evidence warranted, perhaps. But that was the nature of the investment. You believed in the foundation you thought you had laid. The signs had come the way they always came, gradually, then in a pattern he could no longer explain away. Daphne had stopped including him in decisions about the agency 2 years ago. Client dinners she once asked him to attend had become events he heard about after. The shared email address through which she had once copied him on board-level communications had gone quiet, and when he asked about it, she said the firm had migrated to a new system. He had not pushed. He had noted. He had noticed something else, too, in the months before everything clarified. The framed rendering in the hallway of her office. A conceptual drawing he had done on an evening at her kitchen table 4 years ago when they were talking about what the Elevate offices could become if the business kept growing. had been reframed in a brushed gold mat and hung near the entrance like decor. Clients commented on it. Daphne told them it was an artistic print she had found and loved. His initials were still in the lower right corner, small and architectural, the way he lettered everything. She had not removed them. She had simply never mentioned whose hand had drawn it. Then he found the amended operating agreement in the filing drawer of the home office, a drawer she used for agency documents, and that he had no reason to enter until the morning he was looking for their joint insurance records after a car incident. He was not looking for what he found. He found it anyway, the way things that are there always eventually are found. The document was an amendment to the Elevate Creative Group operating agreement. It had been filed with the Georgia Secretary of State's office 14 months ago. It restructured the ownership percentages. It listed Daphne Webb as the sole managing member with 100% operational authority. It listed Nathan Webb as a non-voting silent partner with a reduced equity position. He had signed no such document. His face remained perfectly calm. His hands did not shake. He photographed every page. He noted the notary stamp, the date, the name of the attorney listed on the filing. He returned the document to the drawer at the same angle he had found it. He closed the drawer. He went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water and stood at the window looking at Peachtree Battle Avenue in the morning light, and he was quiet for a long time. Then he sat down and opened his laptop. He spent the following 4 hours in the Georgia Secretary of State's business registry and in the original Elevate Creative Group LLC operating agreement he kept in his own files, a scanned copy secured in cloud storage he had maintained since the company's founding. He compared signatures. He identified 3 discrepancies in the amendment that were not consistent with his own hand. He found that the attorney listed on the filing had dissolved their practice 8 months ago, a detail that would ordinarily mean nothing and now meant something specific. He cross-referenced the notary stamp against the Georgia Notary Public Database and found the stamp number had been decommissioned 2 years before the filing date. The amendment was not merely unauthorized, it was fraudulent. He closed the laptop. He sat still for a moment with the full weight of what the documents meant, not just what Daphne had done, but the scale of the planning it had required, the deliberateness, the layering of detail over detail. You did not forge a notary stamp by accident. You did not file a fraudulent amendment to a business operating agreement on an impulse. This had been constructed, piece by piece over time, with the particular patience of someone who had decided on an outcome and was working backward from it. He opened a new document. He began building a timeline, 14 months of company operations conducted under a document that didn't legally exist. Every contract signed in that period carried the fraudulent amendment's authority. He cross-referenced the Elevate financial statements, which he still had access to, because his access had never been formally revoked, because the amendment only removed his operational authority, not his equity, and worked methodically through each quarter. Revenue had grown. Distributions to the managing member had grown faster. He noted specific figures, the $187. His own gap between what the original compensation structure authorized and what Daphne had paid herself in that period, month by month, in amounts that were individually unexceptional and collectively deliberate. He found in the client contract records 3 agreements signed in the last 14 months with clients he recognized. 2 of them had come to Elevate as referrals from his own professional network, a fact that the amended filing had been careful not to mention and that the original founding agreement had been explicit about in its provisions for referral attribution. He noted all of it. He documented all of it. He closed every folder with the same quiet precision he used when he sealed a set of working drawings, methodically, in order, nothing loose. He thought about the architectural rendering in the hallway of her office, the one she had reframed in a brushed gold mat and hung near the entrance as decor, telling clients it was an artistic print she loved. He had drawn it at her kitchen table 4 years ago, a conceptual rendering of what the Elevate offices could look like if they ever moved to a proper space. His initials were in the lower right corner, small and architectural, the way he lettered everything. She had framed it and called it art and built a false document in the same motion. He had built the company. She had decided to take his name off the plans. He picked up his phone. He called Denise Okafor. He said, "I need a full day." She said, "Come Monday. Bring everything." Some structures appeared sound from the outside for a very long time. The ones that weren't eventually told you. Denise Okafor had been a corporate and business law attorney in Atlanta for 31 years and had the particular manner of someone who had seen enough human behavior to have stopped being surprised by any of it. Her office on the 14th floor of a building in Midtown smelled like good coffee and older paper, and she listened to Nathan with the focused attention of a woman who billed by the hour and used every minute of it. She reviewed the documents for 90 minutes. She set her reading glasses on the desk and looked at him with the careful neutrality of a professional who had reached a conclusion and was choosing how to deliver it. "The notary stamp discrepancy alone is a felony," she said. "We don't need anything else, but we have significantly more than anything else." She tapped the stack. "The original operating agreement is unambiguous. You hold 58% of this company. The amendment is fraudulent. Every action she has taken under that amendment, every contract she has signed as sole managing member, every financial decision she has made under claimed 100% authority is legally questionable." She paused. "She has been making those decisions for 14 months. Nathan was quiet. "What does that mean practically?" "It means that the company's financial activity for the past 14 months is subject to a full forensic audit. It means we file for reinstatement of the original ownership structure, which will succeed because the amendment is fraudulent and will not survive scrutiny." Denise looked at him steadily. "It also means that every dollar she has paid herself above the compensation structure in the original agreement represents an unauthorized distribution from a company you own a majority of." She let that settle. "I would need to do the accounting, but based on what you've described about the firm's revenue over the last year, that number is not small." "I want to know the number," Nathan said. "We'll have it by Friday." She folded her hands. "Your grandmother founded a company," she said. "It was not quite a question, yes. Did she ever have a partner who tried to move the walls after the building was up?" Nathan almost smiled. "Once." "What did she do?" "She bought them out at original valuation and had a new lease signed before the week was out." Denise nodded slowly. "Well, let's see if we can't do something along those lines." That evening, Nathan drove out to Decatur, to the house his Uncle Harold had owned for 38 years. Harold Webb was 71, a retired commercial contractor with a reputation in the Atlanta building industry that outlasted most of the structures he had helped raise. He was the only person still living who had known Nathan's grandmother not from stories, but from the actual hours working alongside her. Harold was on his back porch with sweet tea and the particular evening quiet of a man who had nothing left to prove to anyone. He listened to Nathan without interruption, the way he always listened, not as someone gathering information, but as someone letting the full shape of a thing arrive before responding. When Nathan finished, Harold was quiet for a long moment. "The rendering," Harold said. "The one she hung in the office? Yes, your initials are still on it. Yes." Harold looked at his glass. "That's the thing about people who take what isn't theirs," he said slowly. "They always keep the one piece of evidence that proves it wasn't. They can't help themselves. They want the thing and they want the credit for having it, and they don't reckon that those two wants pull in opposite directions." He looked at Nathan. "Your grandmother would have seen this coming. She had a nose for that particular kind of ambition." "I know," Nathan said. "You going to be all right?" Nathan thought about the plaza drawings, about the angle of the morning light at 8:15, about the foreman who handed him his coffee without being asked. "I'm already all right," he said. Harold nodded once and picked up his glass. "Then you're just finishing a job," he said. "Same as anything else. You started it right. Finish it the same way." Nathan drove back to the city with the windows down and the Atlanta skyline pulling into view the way it always did on the approach from the east, familiar and lit by work that 1,000 people had done without fanfare and without a single announcement at a gala. By Thursday, the forensic accounting picture was what Denise had suggested it would be. In the 14 months since the fraudulent amendment, Daphne had paid herself $187,000 in distributions above the compensation structure established in the original operating agreement. 3 agency contracts had been signed with clients who had originally been Nathan's professional referrals, without his acknowledgement or signature under the fraudulent documents authority. 2 of those clients, he recognized both names, did not know their contracts were potentially compromised. The Friday before the gala, his phone rang while he was on site in Buckhead reviewing the plaza drawings. He saw Daphne's number and let it ring through. She did not leave a message. He went back to the drawings. The foreman, a veteran named Curtis who had worked 3 of Nathan's projects and knew better than to fill a silence, handed him his coffee and said nothing. Nathan had always valued that in a man. The gala invitation had been on the kitchen counter for 2 weeks. He had not planned to go. He had planned to let Denise file, let the reinstatement proceed, let the audit speak in its own language. Then he received an email from Marcus Tillman, chairman of the Elevate Board Advisory Committee, a board Nathan had insisted on at founding, informing him that a significant new client contract was being announced at the gala that evening, a contract worth $1.4 million. Under the fraudulent amendment, Daphne would be signing it as sole owner. His was nowhere in the announcement. His company, in the announcement language, belonged entirely to someone else. He put on the suit. He drove downtown. He walked in. He knew what he was walking into. He had simply wanted her to see him in it first. The gala was still in its second hour when Nathan made his way to the event check-in table near the elevator bank and asked for Marcus Tillman. The name worked the way names worked in rooms like this. Marcus appeared in 4 minutes, a trim, careful man of 62 who had been on the advisory committee since year 1 and who had always treated Nathan with the straightforward respect of someone who understood where the company's actual foundations were buried. Marcus took in Nathan's presence without visible surprise. He did not perform confusion. He said quietly, "I didn't know you'd be here." "I need 5 minutes," Nathan said, "and the board members." Marcus considered him for a moment with the attention of a man who had just understood the ground beneath the room was different than he thought. "Give me 10 minutes," he said. The moment happened in the private dining room adjacent to the main event floor, a room with glass walls that looked out onto the gala, where 200 people in their best clothes moved beneath the lights, and where Daphne, visible through the glass, was laughing with her senior team near the bar. Nathan placed the original operating agreement on the table, the fraudulent amendment beside it, Denise's preliminary legal summary, already filed with the Georgia Secretary of State's office as of 9 that morning, reinstatement petition and all. Beside that, the board members read in silence while Marcus stood at the glass wall watching the gala, saying nothing. Denise was not in the room. She did not need to be. The documents were the argument. It was Raymond O.C., the board's legal liaison, who spoke first. He was a deliberate man who chose words with the economy of someone who understood what they cost. He looked at the notary discrepancy exhibit. He looked at the comparative signature analysis. He set the papers down. "The amendment is fraudulent," he said. "It was not a question," Nathan said. "The contract announcement tonight cannot be executed under the fraudulent document," Nathan said. "Not legally, not without my authorization, a majority owner," he paused, "which I am prepared to give, under the correct ownership structure, once the reinstatement is confirmed." The room absorbed that. Marcus turned from the glass. Through the glass wall, Daphne had moved to the stage area near the back of the main floor. She was adjusting the microphone. The announcement was apparently imminent. Nathan looked at the board members. He did not perform urgency. He spoke in the same tone he used when walking a client through plans, measured, clear, precise. "She has been running this company under a document that doesn't exist," he said. "That ends tonight. The question is how you want the announcement of the correct ownership structure made, and to whom, and in what order." He looked at Marcus directly. "I'd prefer it start in this room." Marcus studied him for a long moment. Outside, through the glass, Daphne took the microphone. "Raymond," Marcus said quietly. Raymond picked up his phone. Daphne was 3 sentences into the announcement, the company's growth, the new client, her vision for the firm's next chapter, when Raymond O.C. appeared at the edge of the stage and spoke briefly to the event coordinator. The coordinator, in the practiced way of event professionals who had managed unexpected changes, moved to the audio board. The microphone dropped in volume. A board member stepped to the stage. What followed was not a scene. It was a correction, the kind that happened quietly, in the presence of witnesses, when paperwork was indisputable and attorneys had already filed. Marcus addressed the room with the calibrated brevity of a man who had managed corporate situations before. He said there had been a documentation matter that required clarification before the evening's contract announcement could proceed. He said the company's leadership structure was being confirmed as of tonight per the original founding agreement. He said the board was grateful for everyone's patience. Daphne stood at the edge of the stage. Her expression had the quality of a person who had walked through a familiar door and found the room on the other side completely rearranged. Nathan watched from the dining room doorway. He did not step onto the floor. He did not need to. He was present. That was enough. She found him there, in the doorway, in the good suit, with his hands in his pockets and the documents visible on the table behind him. And her face moved through its stages with the thoroughness of someone experiencing a very complete understanding. The confidence, the calculation, the realization that the calculation had been running on false numbers for 14 months. She opened her mouth. She closed it. He spoke first. He spoke quietly, and he spoke once. "There's a rendering in your office hallway," he said. "Brushed gold frame. You told your clients it was a print you loved." He looked at her steadily. "My initials are in the lower right corner. NW. Small. Architectural lettering." He paused. "You built this company on my capital, my contacts, and my design. I let you run it because I believed in what you could make of it." He held her gaze for one final moment. "You should have left my name in the corner." He buttoned his jacket. He turned back into the room and shook Marcus's hand and thanked Raymond and the other board members for their time. He walked to the elevator. He pressed the button. He stepped in. The doors closed. The gala continued below. He had been in the right room the entire time. 9 months had moved through Atlanta the way Atlanta months moved, fast and humid in summer, then suddenly cool. Nathan was on the rooftop deck of the Buckhead development on the morning the last of the glazing was completed on the upper floors. He stood at the parapet with his coffee and looked out at a city he had been designing pieces of for 15 years, and felt the particular satisfaction of a man who had built something that would be standing long after the circumstances of its construction were forgotten. The plaza at ground level was exactly what he had insisted on. The bench arrangement, the water feature, the angled light gap between the two towers that let the morning sun reach the public seating at 8:15 every day. He had modeled it twice. He had not mentioned that to the client. Some things you built because they were right. The credit was secondary. A woman named Lauren Marsh was inside reviewing the punch list. She was a structural engineer who had consulted on the project for 8 months and who spoke about load-bearing systems with the same directness Nathan used when he was being precise about something that mattered. She had come to his grandmother's 81st birthday dinner 3 weeks prior without being asked twice, and had sat with Eugenia for 40 minutes discussing the original building contracts while Nathan watched from across the room with the particular feeling of a man who recognized something true when he saw it. Denise had finalized the ownership reinstatement in February. The forensic audit confirmed $187,000 in unauthorized distributions. Daphne's legal team negotiated rather than litigated, which Denise had anticipated. The settlement returned full operational authority of Elevate Creative Group to Nathan's majority ownership. Daphne departed in March with structured severance and a non-disparagement agreement that ran both directions. The $1.4 million contract had been executed correctly in January under Nathan's signature with 2 board members present. The firm was performing better without the overhead of a management structure built on a fraudulent document. He had heard through industry channels that Daphne had started a new venture. Small, self-funded. He wished her nothing specific in either direction. He had moved his attention to other things. Lauren appeared at the rooftop access door with 2 hard hats and a clipboard and the expression of a pink woman who had found something on the punch list that needed his eye. "Upper northwest glazing has a silicone gap at the parapet joint," she said. "Cosmetic for now, but it'll be a thermal issue by February. I'll call the glazier this morning," he said. She handed him the clipboard and looked out at the city, the way people looked at things they were genuinely interested in, without performing the interest. "The light gap works," she said. "That 8:15 angle. I thought it would be closer to 9. I modeled it twice," he said. "I know. I saw the calculations." She looked at him once, briefly, with the attention of someone who had understood something. Then she went back inside. Nathan looked out over Atlanta for a moment longer, at the streets he had helped shape, at the buildings he had designed, and the ones that had been there before him and would be there after, at a city that did not particularly care who had built what, only whether it had been built to last. His grandmother was right. The building didn't care who was watching. It only cared if the work was done right. He was free. He was standing. He had built everything worth keeping. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.